this is what I said before we start crowning the Dolphins, who, by the way, they're still a really good team, but when they play physical football, they lose. They cannot match up with physical football teams. When you get pressure and you hit Tua and you dominate in the trenches and you make them play that style of football, the Dolphins don't win. They lost against the Bills that way, and they've lost against the Eagles this way. And by the way, I think they'd lose, and we'll find out in 2 weeks, I think they'll lose to the Chiefs that way too, because the Chiefs' defensive line is physical, and they can get to you and create pressure and hit the quarterback. I don't think Tua was the problem, but this is just who they are. They're not a Super Bowl contender. They are not. Simple as that, because they can't win these type of football games. The Dolphins have played 3 teams who I think fit the bill of that physical team that can get pressure, that can hit you. Patriots, Bills, and Eagles. Their passing yards averaged in those games, 246. The other teams they play, they average 352 passing yards. So that's 100 yards difference when they're getting beat up and Tua's getting hit and pressured versus when they're not. So the opponents they've beaten, not very good teams, and the good teams they've lost to or struggled very heavily. The Patriots aren't even a good team. This is who they are. They're not, there's no chance they win the Super Bowl like this.
Yeah, I'll straight up be a Miami defender on this podcast. I have no problem doing it. You calling them not a Super Bowl contender,
which is so funny because I picked them to win the division and you didn't.
Right, but still, it's out of this world.
They're not.
That's not true. It's just not factual. Because even though that they can lose up against really good football teams, it's kind of the counter argument. They lose against good football teams because they're good football teams.
Yeah, so who do you have to beat in the playoffs? Good teams.
Good football teams.
Right.
But I'm not saying that everyone, okay, out of those 3 teams that you just listed, how many did they win?
They beat the Patriots, who aren't a good team, but they are physical.
The Patriots came in there and they beat the Bills, and they didn't beat the Dolphins. So
right.
I'm just saying, if a team can hang 70 points on an NFL team, they can be a Super Bowl contender. It's kind of
contender. Define contender.
A contender, somebody who could play up against any team on any given day and have the chance of winning.
You think there is a possibility they win the Super Bowl? Because it's not.
This game was neck and neck until the interception that Tua threw. It was one mistake that derailed the game. That happens in big games. It just does. It happens against the Chiefs. It happens against the Bills. Like, this team was very, very close. Even the stats were close. Both quarterbacks were sacked the same amount of time. Both quarterbacks had an interception. Jalen actually had a fumble. It was the interception that changed the game, because then the Dolphins were playing from behind in short amount of time, and they couldn't step up. But
you say that, and like it was a close game. I'm not arguing that, but that still defeats the point. At the end of the game, the Eagles got the ball with like 10, 12 minutes left on the clock, and they just ran it out. They moved all the way downfield, drained the clock, scored with like 5 minutes left, then ended up getting the ball back. Like, the Dolphins couldn't. They didn't have a chance in the fourth quarter. They never hardly even had the ball back. That's what I'm saying, because they got dominated in the trenches. And obviously Miami's defense is bad, so that's one problem. But the opposite side, it's not even Tua. Like, I thought Tua was fine in this game. Obviously the interception was bad, but they're a good team. They can win regular season games, but anytime you go up against a legit contender, a team that was in the Super Bowl, the Bills, a team that are repeatedly winning playoff games, that have those physical fronts, it seems like they don't stand a chance. And maybe it's close for a couple quarters, but at the end, it washes out to where they go home the losers. I don't think there's any chance they could beat one of these teams in the playoffs. Could they win a playoff game? Yes, obviously, depending on the matchup. Like, I think they could beat the Jaguars. I think they could beat, the Seahawks, but the Chiefs, the Bills, the Eagles, the 49ers, Cowboys, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just, I don't agree with you on this. And like, I will be the first to admit if I'm proven wrong, but I do think that they are a Super Bowl contender. They can be a Super Bowl contender. I think they can make it through a couple of rounds of the playoffs, because I think that they are really, really good. And even when we were watching the game together, you were talking about how great Tua is. But I'm telling you, it was the one interception that derailed the game. And I don't even put all the blame on Tua for that. Yeah, he got pressure, and I think he did underthrow the ball a little bit, if I remember correctly.
It was a bad
but it was
throw.
also it was the route. That route was weird because they ran too close together. I don't think that's how it was originally designed because it kept the safeties really close together, and that's what let the additional safety come up and make the pick. But yeah, I think it was just like you had two really good teams, and the first team to make a mistake, and the other team didn't capitalize on another mistake, won. So I think that's kind of how the game went, and I think when Miami made that mistake, their defense couldn't step up and make Hurts make another mistake. Now, Hurts made several mistakes that game, and the Eagles had a couple of sloppy play calls that game. Specifically, I think it was 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 8 at the goal line, and they chose a quarterback draw.
Yeah,
like that was
weird.
I don't know what you're doing there at all. Maybe they thought they would get to like the 2-yard line and do the tush push or something.
Yeah, right.
Or what do you call it? The brotherly shove?
Yeah, I don't like saying tush.
Well,
it's weird.
That one time in high school, you just can't get past it.
Hey, easy. We're live. All right. Well, we'll see. Again, I think Dolphins are good. I just don't think they have a shot against these type of teams. Hopefully, we'll get to find out. And they'll play Kansas City in 2 weeks internationally. So we'll see what happens.